Is that a bird? Is that a plane? No, but it might as well be any of them with how fast it flew away from me. It's my knowledge of statistical field theory. Welcome to another episode of the More Than Physics podcast, where just like in the text publication, I'll talk about physics, mathematics, and science in general. But here it's in the context of how my day-to-day in academia is going. So lectures, study routines, topics being covered, and things I learned or have been struggling to understand. A reminder that if you want to support the podcast or the publication, the Substack link is in the show notes. So, finally, finals week. I went to it with some expectations, as you might have known from last time. Quantum field theory, I was very excited about and very happy with the results, at least very happy with how I felt about it. I didn't, of course, know the results. I still don't know the results, the grades from any of the exams. But I do know that the quantum field theory exam on Monday went really well. Of course, I didn't ace it because there's always things you're not going to know. There's always questions that are going to be asked that are going to be quite obscure, or maybe sections of the problem-solving process that you didn't really remember or you didn't focus on when you studied. And that certainly did happen to me, as it happens to everyone, or mostly everyone, most of the time. But I'm still very satisfied. I think I got the grade that I needed. I needed about 30% of this final exam. Thankfully, QFD wasn't 100% dependent on the final exam. We had hand-ins, we had other possibilities to get grades. So yeah, I'm very happy that I probably got what I needed. But more than that, I'm happy with what I learned in the course in general. Last week was basically focused, like last episode of the podcast was basically focused on how satisfied I was or how excited I was that I was understanding quantum field theory and how it made me feel like I was taking a good step towards understanding reality, and how glad I am that I am taking this course, or that I took this course now in the past tense, because I think I passed it. The questions in the exam spanned from very conceptual ones about polarization and scattering up to some very long calculations where we basically received a Lagrangian, which is a function that explains how the system is organized energetically. I talked about that last episode. Basically, we got that Lagrangian and we were asked to do a bunch of things with it, like getting the equations of motions. And of course, this Lagrangian is a quantum field theory, is a quantum field Lagrangian, similar to what you would get in a classical field theory, but of course now with different conditions, different commutation relations, different operators that can act on that field theory, and with interaction terms too between the different kinds of fields. We dealt a lot with spinor fields and vector fields. So yeah, we got some Lagrangians and we were asked to get the equations of motions, to understand what the coupling factors between the fields were, and of course to draw the Feynman diagrams of that theory, or at least to certain order, because of course, depending on what order of the interaction you're considering, the diagrams can get more and more complicated. Some momentum and spin conservation rules, and then some things about Noether's theorem, which is basically a relationship between symmetries of a system and conserved quantities that rise from it. So for example, if you have a time symmetry on your system, you get a conservation of energy. If you have a translational symmetry, a spatial translational symmetry in the system, linear momentum is conserved. And then there's other more obscure quantities like electric charge gets locally conserved because you have something called gauge invariance. So yeah, we had to deal with that. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing this exam. I think I went well enough. So yeah, still waiting for the results, but overall, very good feelings. By the way, this direct relationship between conserved quantities and symmetries of a system, this thing called Noether's theorem, is one of my favorite things in physics. It's one of the things that I find is more beautiful and fundamental about how our universe works. So I do want to write about it. I do want to talk about it in more detail at some point, not only because it's beautiful, because I like it, but also it appears in so many different ways, in so many different fields, sometimes when you're not even expecting it. And some of its consequences are very important, very strong. So like these conserved quantities, some of the most fundamental things that we study in physics seem to appear naturally, almost organically out of these symmetries of systems. And the reasoning for why that happens and how that happens is very beautiful. So if you want to hear me talk about it or read a text of mine about it, let me know in the Substack chat or comment section. I know Spotify also has a comment section. Feel free to leave your comment there. I will, of course, read it and take it into account. I much appreciate the interest and engagement. If you want to reach me in any social networks, the links are all in the show notes. So that was quantum field theory, QFT. The next one I want to talk about is GR, general relativity. It was actually the last one I did. It was on Friday. I was already very tired from the whole week. I'll leave my comments on the SFT, the statistical field theory exam, at the end, but I just don't really have much to say about GR, so I'll just get it out of the way. It was not very surprising. It had the things that I predicted would be there because I had already taken a GR course in my bachelor's, and also my thesis was about black holes, so I kind of knew what I was doing. And also I only needed like 2% in that exam because fortunately most of the grade of this course was composed of homework hand-ins, and so I was pretty much passed. And I didn't even focus that much. I didn't even prepare properly because I had to focus on statistical field theory. So I kind of chose GR as sadly the one course that would suffer in preparation time. The resulting grade will probably reflect this lack of preparation, I'll be honest. Lots of my mistakes in the exam could have been prevented by a little more effort put beforehand, but I think I answered most of the problems in a relatively okay manner. And unfortunately, these kinds of choices of focusing on one course in detriment of another sometimes have to happen. We don't have infinite time to prepare, and GR took the blame, took the bullet, unfortunately, because SFT really, really was difficult. It was a course that I really wasn't understanding. And at the end, it was worth it. I believe it was worth it because if I hadn't put that effort into SFT, I probably wouldn't have passed it, or I probably wouldn't have performed as well as I did. But again, SFT will be commented on at the end. The content of the GR exam, as expected, had a lot to do with indices. So the mathematical notation that we use in general relativity, representing vectors and tensors with indices. So there was a lot of using metric tensors to rewrite equations and using identities and stuff like that. That's always a good practice to have. But I do think that sometimes GR teaching materials and books focus on that a bit too much. Like it's just algebra and using some rules to rewrite things. I get that it's important, but yeah, maybe it goes too far a little bit. The other problems were a lot more fun and related to black holes. So we had to use different metrics, which are different descriptions of geometries of space-time, depending on what type of matter you have in there. So we had a pretty simple one with a Schwarzschild black hole, which is not rotating and doesn't have any charge. So it's a very simple black hole, spherically symmetrical. And we had to calculate some quantities related to orbits and how do you get close to it, what happens when you get close to it, what happens to your energy, to your angular momentum, and so on. That was cool, also pretty doable. Not any major complications there. One of the most difficult problems in the exam was about something called the Penrose process, which I find very interesting, I find very cool. The Penrose process is something that can happen when you have rotating black holes, because when a black hole is rotating, it essentially creates two different regions. So you have the internal event horizon that is present in all black holes, which is this boundary that you can cross in, but you can't cross out. Basically, it's the moment at which light can't escape a black hole anymore. So light can get very close to a black hole and it can still escape. But as soon as light, or anything else for that matter, crosses this event horizon, it can't escape anymore. Every black hole has that, no matter if it's rotating or not, or if it has charge or not. But in case of a rotating black hole, you create a different boundary, a different region which is something called the ergosphere. This region is generated by the rotation of the black hole itself, and inside of it, there's a phenomenon called frame dragging. So essentially, the rotation of the black hole drags space-time around it. And it's a very cool thing. It's a very brutal thing. And this Penrose process proposed by the mathematician physicist Roger Penrose is this genius idea that because of that frame dragging effect, because space-time itself is rotating and twisting in that region, what you can do is jump into that region. So you get like a spacecraft or something to get into that region, which is not exactly the event horizon itself. So you can still escape it. And what you do is you enter this region with an amount of energy, and by releasing part of what you have, so for example, by dropping part of your weight or dropping some fuel or dropping some very heavy thing into the black hole, you can leave the ergosphere with more energy than you had at the start. So it's not only that you're leaving part of the mass of the system and you're gaining the energy equivalent to what you lost. No, that's not what happened. That can happen anywhere, right? If you push a thing to the left, you go to the right. So that's not what's happening here. You're actually gaining energy. And what's happening is this object that you dropped, or this mass that you dropped, or this fuel that you dropped, for example, inside of the black hole while you were at the ergosphere, this object is going to take some of the angular momentum out of the black hole because of angular momentum conservation. Again, the Noether's theorem, the thing I was talking about a few minutes ago, it comes up here because it's basically a conserved quantity. Angular momentum is a conserved quantity. So when you throw something into the black hole that is basically, it's difficult to explain without the maths, but basically it's something that's rotating in the opposite direction of a black hole. And these rotations will kind of cancel each other, not completely, but it will cause the overall rotational energy of the black hole to diminish a little bit. And this rotational energy will be gained by you. So you get into the ergosphere with a certain amount of energy, you drop something out of there, and you can get out of the region with a lot more energy than you came in. It's essentially a way of gaining energy. It's a generation process. It's an extraction process of the rotational energy of the black hole. It's incredible. It's great. So yeah, that was one of the problems in our general relativity exam. It was very complicated, very long one. That one, I'm pretty sure I got confused in some places. But yeah, that was the GR exam. And that leaves us with statistical field theory, SFT. And let me tell you, that was hard. It was completely worth it to sacrifice the time of preparation of the other two exams to focus on this one. Because if I hadn't done it, who knows how bad it could have gone. And I'm not saying it went great, because it didn't go great. I don't think it went great for anyone. The problems were overcomplicated versions of the concepts that we had come in contact with in the lectures. So it had little details that made it overly complicated and like unnecessarily long. The exam in general was too long to complete, even for the long time of 3 hours that we had. So it felt at the same time too long and too short. Again, I've written about this in the Substack. It was basically me going on a long rant about why these types of exams are bad. And I was specifically referring to this SFT one, which was at the time upcoming. And I knew it was going to be this shitty. And it was, to the point that while doing the exam, I questioned myself whether I had put enough effort in. Well, I did. I really did know that I had invested hours and weeks in this thing to really try and understand it. I did the exercises, I read the material, I've asked questions, I've gone to the lectures, I've gone to the tutorials, I've studied in group. Why wasn't it working? And so I had this battle inside me, and I believe most people doing the exam had that same battle inside them of, why is this so difficult? Why is it fair that it is so difficult? And the answer is, it isn't. It's not fair. I finished the exam. I was tired. I was disappointed in myself and disappointed in the education system in general. Even this uni being a very, very good one, it doesn't escape these archaic types of examination that are proven to be unnecessarily complicated and to put too much pressure into students while not really measuring how well they've learned. And after I handed it in and left the lecture hall, I started discussing with the other people that had also just taken it. Surprise, surprise, nobody loved the experience. Everyone felt bad and tired and worried. They felt guilty that they didn't spend 23 hours a day instead of just 18 preparing for this exam. They thought something was wrong with themselves, or they thought something was wrong with the system and with the course. So it was a mixture of guilt and shame and self-doubt and anger, revolt. Why is this allowed? And why did we think it was going to be different this time? Me personally, I still think I kind of passed, just barely. Just here looking at the exam later, looking at how much each question was worth and how many points I needed. I think I got it, just barely. But in general, it's horrible that something like this exists and that most students are probably not going to pass, to be honest. What usually happens in previous years, at least that's what I've heard, is that some sort of grading on a curve happens, which is just a normalization of the grades based on the fact that everyone did bad. And okay, that's good. That's going to level out the performance and more people are going to pass. But the fact that this has to be done every year, and I've heard that for this course, this always has to be done, it just means that something fundamentally is wrong and something could change. Something could be learned here about the evaluation methods or the exposition methods or something. I really don't know. I just know that having such a low average, which we're expecting the results still, but I'm expecting the average grade to be really, really low, is a clear indication, especially if it happens every time, that something needs to be reviewed. The effect that an event like this has on me is, curiously, I tend to have more difficulty remembering things when I initially had to study them for an exam like this. So for some reason, I link the knowledge itself with a bad experience, and my brain can't fetch the concepts as easily as other things. Hence the joke at the beginning of the episode, by the way. Go back and listen to it again. But now it's time for my general thoughts about the semester, specifically about my first semester in the Masters. The first feeling I have, and the first feeling I have had ever since this course started, is this university is amazing. I loved this start to my master's. I love the fact that I'm doing a master's degree. To have the opportunity to do that is a privilege and a joy. I'm very happy to have met so many people that made the journey more enjoyable. I'm happy to have learned so many things. And overall, like everything, right? Everything that composes an academic environment, from the extremely high quality of the courses and the lecturers and researchers that are there to help you. So not only the professors, but also the PhD students that are being teachers' assistants and leading the tutorials to help you with the exercises. Of course, nothing can be perfect. And as I commented before in SFT, it was a less than ideal course, but I still think it's a very high quality course. I learned a lot, and the resources that I was given to try to learn these things were great. So I'm very happy about the courses themselves. I'm happy about the selection of courses, because these ones I just took were the mandatory courses for the first semester. And after that, I'll take some different things. I'll talk in the end what I'm going to do for the next semester. But I liked these mandatory courses, and I also do like the selection that we have, the elective courses that we can do from now on. Again, this uni is amazing, not only because of the quality of the courses and the quality of the researchers and the lecturers, but like just the vibes in general. Like the campus is so beautiful. The science park is amazing. You can sit anywhere to study, and you're always going to have an aesthetically interesting and pleasing environment around you. I think that helps a lot. The university library itself, both the university libraries, we have two, one in the science park and one in the city center. They're both very pretty and very different between each other. So you can always book a room or book a little table for you to study either alone or in group. And again, great resources, great things to provide students ways of learning and removing hurdles from students. So if you reserve a room, for example, it seems like a simple thing. It seems like a small thing. But reserving a room or reserving a little study place guarantees that you're not going to be disturbed or that you have the actual right to be there. And so you don't have, first of all, the uncertainty of like going to the university library and not being sure whether it's going to be full, especially close to the exam season. And it does get very full to the point that to get in the library, you need a reservation. You need to reserve a study space when it gets close to exam season, because it is exam season for everyone. Second of all, again, you're not going to be bothered or disturbed by anyone. And third of all, which I think is important to me at least, is if you book a table from, let's say, 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., it's an extra incentive for you to actually go there. Like I have some difficulties with willpower, with setting up specific times to study. But whenever I booked a desk at the uni library for a certain interval, I went there, arrived on time, and studied for the whole interval. It really helped me. So that's the courses and the environment. And the last thing I want to talk about is the people. I'm so glad that the people around me, the people taking the same courses and joining this Masters of Theoretical Physics with me, were and are so lovely, such great friends, great work colleagues. It's amazing to be able to study with them and bounce ideas off of each other, explain to each other things each of us have understood and ask the questions some of us haven't understood. It helps everyone move forward. It helps everyone understand each other better and the concepts better. And also, not only that, we're not only study friends, we can also go out, and we have done some great activities throughout the city in the days that we had time, which closer to the exam season, it was sparser, but we still tried to do things. And don't get me wrong, there were negative things, but I think they're just minor nitpicks, and those are always going to be there no matter what you're doing, no matter your situation in life. You're always going to have things to complain about, but really, I don't think it's worth saying anything about that, because truly this semester has been a wonderful experience. I'm very glad I made that choice. I'm very glad I was able to make that choice to come here to study and to take this master. And I hope the next semesters will look like that too. I just realized I've been talking for like 25 minutes. Some of it is, of course, going to get cut because I ramble a lot, but this is getting long. So I'm just going to finish off this episode by saying next semester, my plan is to take advanced quantum field theory and string theory. String theory is one of the many attempts, and to my knowledge, one of the first kind of promising attempts at connecting general relativity with quantum mechanics, which has been notoriously difficult to do. And I understand nothing about it, so I'm very curious. And advanced QFT, I'm taking it only because I got fascinated by QFT this semester, as I spoke in length about in the last episode. So yeah, I just want to see where it goes next. Other than that, I'm starting a new job because unfortunately you can't live off of studying and talking about science unless you guys really, really want to support the podcast and the Substack publication. In that case, thank you very much and share it around. So that means my rhythm of academic stuff will slow down, but hopefully not that much. And the last thing is that my new semester is going to take a week to start. I have a little bit of a break. So the podcast is also taking a break. No episode next week. Sad, but the week following that, I start with the advanced QFT and string theory things and talking about my new routine with a new job and everything. If you want to be notified when that comes out, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack publication, link in the show notes as always, to also receive all text posts, as well as to participate in the discussions and questions about the topics in the chat or in the comment sections. More Than Physics is a reader and listener supported publication, so thank you for being here and for sharing it around. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time.